This is WEBurlesque.
Hey, it's Viktor Devonne. Thank you for listening. Special thank you to my Patreon supporters, Alex, Andrea, Bo, Joyce, Dullbody, Kelly Blue, Princess Chris, Rob Starabin, Ruthless Retribution, Stormageddon, and Drew Wilkinson. Really appreciate it. Don't forget, if you go to Patreon and you support any amount, you will have access to our monthly home theater editions, as well as, depending on your tier, some other bonuses. So, thank you very, very much.
Hi, this is T.C. Roosevelt. Hi, this is Daisy Bitch.
Hey everyone, this is Ginger Twist.
Hi everyone, this is Petra Fried.
This is Mina Minu.
Hello, this is Nasty Canasta.
This is Bella Simmons.
This is Femme Appeal, and you're listening to WEBurlesque the Podcast, Season 5! Yeah.
Cool. Then, shall we?
We shall.
Excellent.
Who's on your shirt first?
It is a bootleg 1994 Madonna.
Oh, nice. I'm wearing, underneath my sweatshirt, I'm wearing my New York Burlesque Festival.
Ooh.
From, I don't remember what year this was. 16th annual, whenever that was. I think that was like 2 years ago, maybe.
I think you're right. Yeah. I don't have that one. I have the one right before it. But I was
the only reason I got it was because it was covered in stars, and I was like, "Oh, that's fun." And it's a tank top sold.
Did you make it into a tank top, or did it start off?
No, it was. It started off as a tank top, and I said, "Nope, that's going to me now."
This is WeBurlesque the Podcast. I am your host, Viktor Devonne. It is season 5. Today we are recording on March 6th, 2021, and I am in Riverside, California, and I have on the line a fabulous dancer, an entertainer, and performer, and producer. I have Twinky Boots. Hello.
Hi.
How do?
Oh, you know, just living the dream.
Yeah. Yeah. I met you, or at least I saw you. I don't know if we officially met that day at Rock Bar. You were doing a Broadway Bares Equity Fights AIDS benefit fundraiser performance. Yes. And you were doing all kinds of bendy, stretchy Liza Minnelli kicks on that stage. And I said, I don't know who that is. And then suddenly you were just everywhere. How long had you been working with the Broadway Bares folk?
Let's see, that would have been probably 4 years ago now that we met.
Just about, yeah, that would have been.
So at that point I had probably been doing Broadway Bares that would have been my 3rd year working with them and like doing the show, but it would have been my 4th year fundraising for them. So I've been working with them basically since I got to the city and started working in the city, because when I was in college, I stumbled upon the fundraiser for Broadway Bares and was like, what is this? This is me. Like, this is what I do, because it's all like sexy jazz dancing, and that's what I do. So I need to figure out how I'm getting in this show eventually, or how I'm getting involved with this fundraiser somehow. And once I moved here and started like making connections, then I stumbled upon the right person that introduced me with how I needed to get involved, which ironically was go-go dancing at XL nightclub before that was pushed away to something else, because they were doing a Broadway Bares winter solo strips benefit, and they needed more rotation dancers, and somebody submitted me, and I met Jerry that night, and he was like, why haven't you done the big show? And I was like, I don't know how. And he said, well, we'll fix that. And then we did.
No, that obviously is Jerry Mitchell, who
yes, of course.
The creator? Is he the one who began it? He began Broadway Bares?
He's the creative mind behind it. Him and 6 friends of his that were in various Broadway shows decided to put together a fundraiser at Splash, and they choreographed some go-go dance moments and put on a show of sorts at Splash and raised money. And they decided it did so well, the showing, quote unquote, that they were doing, that the owner was offered, if I kick everybody out and charge them again, will you do another show? And we can raise more money that way. And they were like, absolutely, let's do it. And the folklore is that because they were doing it for free and they were raising money for Broadway Cares, or what was going to become Broadway Cares,
Sure.
The owner was like, well, I can't pay you because I don't have any kind of overhead to do that, but I can give you this. And he gave them all shots of tequila. And so now every year between the first show and the second show, everybody has a shot of tequila on Jerry. And he like passes around handles of tequila around to all the dancers and makeup artists and people who donate their time, because it's entirely donation based. Like none of us are doing it to make any money off of it. We're really just doing it to raise money for those who need it. So that's partially why I wanted to do the show, because I wanted to be involved with something so big like that, that's all about just giving back and like using what talents and things that you bring to the table in a way that benefits everyone else.
Well, I mean, it's obviously there's so much work must go into it, because for those at home who haven't seen our Broadway Bares, there actually was a documentary, I think, released earlier in 2020 that was in lieu of an actual Broadway Bares performance. And it goes into some of the backstory, and it shows a number of the performances in total. And it's a lot. It is sort of like burlesque meets Broadway, because it is such a spectacle. How much time and rehearsal goes into one of those performances?
What's really funny about it is that the amount of time that we've spent putting together the show is only a fraction of each year's show, of course, because as soon as the show finishes, we usually do it on Father's Day every year. Like, it's a running joke every year that after the dress rehearsal, Jerry gets on a megaphone and says, all right, everybody, go call your dads, it's Father's Day. And then everyone goes and wishes their dads happy Father's Day. And then we come back and do 2 shows. But it was kind of I kind of lost my train of thought just then, because I was thinking about calling everybody's dads.
Basically, how much time it all takes.
Right. No. So as soon as the show ends, that following Monday, which is the next day, they will start planning the next show.
Oh, wow.
A full year in advance. And so the directors and the producers and all of the people start thinking of the concept of what the next show will be and what kind of numbers they could have from that. And then we'll start to introduce the choreographers and whatnot. And then the dancers and the performers don't get involved until about 3 weeks before the show. We'll get our quote unquote casting notice from our volunteer submission. We'll get that about mid-May, and then we'll start our first rehearsal first week of June, and then put the show on. So we get, for each number in the show, we get about 3 to 4 4-hour rehearsals to put the show together. Wow.
So before we get into some of your backstory and how you all fell into all of this, just to close up the Broadway Bares things, what are some of the most memorable either performances or aspects of doing it over the last couple of years that you can recall?
Every year doing a number is like meeting a new version of your family. So the very first year that I was involved, I definitely felt like I had a lot to prove, because I was one of the non-union people that was picked to be in the show. Nobody really knew who I was. luckily, I happened to be put into a number with a bunch of other performers that just happened to be doing it for their first time. And so we all just bonded and clicked together, and we're just like, we're the last number of the show. Not the finale, we're the last like number of the show. So we have to just prove everybody right in why they put us in this spot. So it was, like I said, it's like you meet a new version of your family, and every year the thing that you look forward to most is like getting to see and perform with all of those people again, whether it be in the same number, because some years you're in a number with someone and then you don't do a number again with them ever, or maybe you do a number with them the following year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things, like I love seeing everybody just do what they're good at. Like, it's not a competition anymore. Like, so much of our career is about competing and auditioning to get the role. And
Right.
This show is not about that. It is about celebrating what everybody's strengths are and showcasing them. And that's what I love about it. And that's why I go back to it every year. And that's why I try to bring something new and something more exciting every time I go back. So that's my favorite part.
And I guess there's no real time for like wardrobe fittings, and a lot of the times there's the coordination of everyone has to look either very similar or such. So do you ever have to be responsible for like, okay, bring something silver, or is it fully top to bottom costume?
Everything is actually costumed for us. The only time they ever ask us to bring something of our own may be like a shoe, just because they either don't have it in stock or they don't have a way of ordering the shoe to be there in time.
Mm-hmm.
If they're like, if you have something that's like this, bring it. If it's danceable, if you're comfortable in it, that's the most important thing, is that we want you to feel comfortable dancing on this stage, because it is a very strange stage to dance on, because they have to put it together the day of. So there's not really time to like lay down a Marley, lay down all of the other like safety precaution things. So it's like an actual concert arena stage. Mm-hmm. So it's very slippery. And their first concern, of course, is always, we're doing this, we're professionals, but one trip up, like any kind of spill, any kind of mess could end a career, essentially, because of the danger involved with some of the things, like some of the aspects of the show. So the first thing and top priority is always safety. They want you to make sure that if it's a shoe that you think you're not going to be able to dance in, don't do it. Like, if you know yourself better than what the choreographer or the director is going to say that they know about you. So if you know you can do it, great. If you know you can't, make sure you're saying it, because the only thing that is important is your safety. But yeah, all the costumes, that's the costumer for one of my numbers is actually how I got introduced into Broadway Bares, because he was a friend of mine that I met doing a music video shoot. And I mentioned like my interest in doing Broadway Bares. And he was like, oh, I've done costumes for that a couple of times. And I was like, what? How did you do that? And he's like, oh, it's all volunteer based. You just send in your stuff on this day and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, great. So I'm going to need you to let me know when that is or how I do that, because that's the only thing I've really ever wanted to do in New York. So let's make that happen. And so we did.
And is there like a full tech, or just do tops and bottoms?
So the day of the show is, we usually do 5 full runs of the show.
Ooh.
We'll get in. So the weekend of Broadway Bares, Saturday will be like a tech run of the lighting and just to see your spacing on the stage. Most times there's not even enough time to run the full number. Mm-hmm. It's just like a cue to cue to see like, this is where you'll be. This is who's before you. This is who's after you. These are your traffic patterns for getting on and off the stage, because there's about 200 people in the show. So you have to like know the paths. And then on Sunday, the day of, you get there bright and early in the morning, usually about 9 a.m. You do a dress run, cue to cue with everything. Then you do another like stop and start if there were problems or any issues with costumes or any issues with like transitions going in and off. Then right around lunchtime, they will do another full dress rehearsal. And then all the people who are in Broadway shows that have matinees leave and go do their matinee.
Oh, of course.
Then we all come back, start hair and makeup process, and do one more full dress rehearsal. If the others in the morning have gone smoothly, usually we only do 2. But if they haven't gone smoothly, we'll do a 3rd one in the morning. But then we do the dress rehearsal and then the 2 shows after that. So the 9:30 and the 12. It's a lot. You're exhausted, but you're running on pure adrenaline at that point. And everyone always talks about like the moment that they hear the crowd. And it's an insane feeling. Like as soon as that curtain goes up, if you're in that opening number and you hear the roar of everybody that's so excited that the show is starting, you just forget the fact that you have had no sleep. You're running on 4 full performances that you've already done of this show and are wearing more hair product than you've probably worn for the entire year on this one night, coupled with more makeup than you've ever worn in your life as well. So it's a lot, but it's great.
I fell into, speaking of Jerry Mitchell, I became aware of it because I was interested, but my long-term makeup career was sort of spurred by the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Jerry did the choreography for Rocky Horror Show, and we went to a matinee, and the poster boy of that year, Jonathan Sharp, was one of the Phantoms, and he was sprinkling the audience with flyers, and that's how I heard that it even existed. And then ever since, it just sort of got larger and larger. A couple of years ago, obviously, it got a lot of press because Laverne Cox was involved. And when there's a big
that was actually my first year dancing in it, was the year that Laverne was in it.
Yeah, and it's like it just seems to get larger and larger, which of course is great. And then suddenly we hit a year that it can't be done, and probably the first since what? It started in 92, 93. So just in time for what, 20 years of its
Yeah, there were a few years that they did more than one in the same year. Then when it became an annual thing, this past year, 2020, would have been its 30th.
Okay.
But not the 30th year. It just would have been the 30th Broadway Bares.
So before Broadway Bares, before you came to New York, where did young Twinky Boots meet the world?
Well, I greeted the world in an Air Force Base hospital in England. So she's British, world.
Are you actually, or does an American military hospital, does that count as American ground?
So it technically classifies me as a dual citizen.
Useful as an actor.
Useful as an actor, useful as in a political environment that was unstable for so long. Just knowing I had it out if I needed. But no, I've always had this like deep passion of going back. I've never been back to England since we moved when I was 9 months old. And I've always wanted to go back either to perform or just to see where I was born. Because it's a thing that it's like a bit of closure that you always want, but you're like, do I do it or do I get it? And I was thinking I was going back this past year, but no, alas, had to wait another year. But yeah, so I was born in England before my father retired from the Air Force, lived in Nebraska. And then eventually we settled back in Kentucky where my brother still lives there, but my parents actually met in Kentucky and their families were there. So we moved to be closer to their families. And then
did you at one point
went
have an
through.
accent, or did you?
I never developed the accent for anywhere that I lived. I was like, we moved out of England before I was speaking, so I didn't have the cute
Sure.
British accent for a child. Didn't like Nebraska doesn't really have one. So I guess by the time we moved, because I was 7 when we moved to Kentucky, so I guess by that point my speech pattern had already kind of developed. And then I never took it on. I can put it on if
Sure.
I need to put on like which as an actor is always, this helpful skill, but I can put on the one specifically from where I grew up, and it's not the like normal Southern accent that people expect, because they're like, oh, the Southern accent, that's like the go-to thing that people will always say from the North is like, oh, the Southern accent, it's so sexy. It's like blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, really? Because where I'm from, you would not think that the Southern accent is sexy. They're like, what are you talking about? Aren't they all the same? And I'm like, no. So now, of course, it's the point where you're going to be like, so let's hear it.
No, it's okay. You're not on today. You're not on today. It's, and I grew up in Connecticut, so I guess I had whatever speech pattern was developed there, but I had a habit of mumbling as a child, and it followed me into adulthood. So I now try to be as enunciation centric as possible to be understood, because the last thing I want is for someone to not understand what I'm saying or where I'm coming from. And that became like a component of me as a child, not being picked on, but it being at least recognized that I spoke properly. And so they said, where are you from? Why do you talk like that? And it would be like, I'm from Connecticut. And as if that would explain it. But for some, for 11-year-olds, it does.
Connecticut.
Yeah. Because that was when I moved to New Jersey. So, but it was also like the 90s when it was extraordinarily popular to sort of slur one speech into
right
whatever,
the kind of like lackadaisical approach to the world of the 90s.
So when you were a performing arts kid? Was that something? I mean, I imagine you in every possible instance kicklining. So was that something that happened?
That's funny as well. No, I was, but I wasn't. Like, I started on stage when I was 5, but it was always in school things it was like the school Christmas production that we did in Nebraska. That was like the first time I really ever like performed. And then when I got to Kentucky, the elementary school that I went to didn't really do much. We would do like class skits or like little things. And then when I got to 5th grade, they did a DARE graduation play. So in it, I landed the role of Captain Specific. Ironically has my same initials, so that was fun. But he was a drug fighting superhero who had a theme song. And I know specifically the reason that I got it was because I could project enough that I didn't need a microphone. And we were performing in a, like, the traditional cafeteria, gymnasium, theater space in every elementary school. And they were like, we need you to be able to be loud, but not scream. And I was like, okay, I could do that. And they're like, really? And I go, yes, I can do that. And they're like, oh, okay, great. So did that, and then started like doing every once in a while we would have like a school play kind of thing through middle school. And I really didn't fall into the like performer mode of me until I got to high school and joined the speech and debate team. And in that, I would do a lot of the acting categories rather than just the speech categories, because within the National Forensics League gamut of competition, there's all these different acting categories, and I did a lot of the interpretation events that you would do, like a 10-minute script playing all the characters. So I would just bring out all of these random character voices and do all of these different like physicality things. And my coach was also the drama teacher for our high school, and he was like, so when are you going to do the productions here at the school? And I was like, I guess whenever the auditions are. But he's like, so is this like a thing like you want to do, or is this like just a hobby, or like what is this? And I was like, I mean, I enjoy it, but back at that point in my life, I was going to be a math teacher. Like that's what I wanted to do, was I wanted to be a college math professor, and that's just what I was going to do, because math was something that was always just like very easy for me to grasp and understand. And I wanted other people to understand it and grasp it as well. But I wanted to do it on a higher plane level rather than like teaching elementary school kids like the basics. I wanted to be teaching like more complex formulas and things like that. So I was just like, I was like, I mean, it's fun, but I don't really know where I will go, like where I would go with it or anything like that. And he introduced me to a summer program that was called the Governor School for the Arts. He was like, I think you should apply for this specifically in the acting category, because if you get in, there's a lot of scholarships and things that are offered for school, but also I just think it would be a big boost for you. But he tried to spin it in a different way. He was like, I think it'd be a good boost for you for your categories within speech. And I was so competitive that I was like, sure, if it's going to help me get the edge and like get me to nationals, then great. I was like, you were tricky, sir. So I auditioned, thought I bombed the audition, completely bombed it, because you can do it either the summer after your sophomore year or your junior year. So I was like, well, I'll audition after sophomore year. If I don't get it, then I guess I can audition again for junior year,
This
whatever.
is what, like age 15, 16?
Yeah. Yeah, really was. Oh gosh, that's a time ago. So I auditioned. I thought I just completely failed. Like it did not feel good. There was like you do a monologue and then some improv and just like whatever. And they bring you in like groups of 6 and you do everything with that group of 6 and whatever. My improv felt stale and fake and whatever. And I just was like, nope, not a good representation of me. My monologue was meh, okay. And then Easter of that year, I get a letter in the mail saying I got in, that I was one of the 30 that were selected for the program. And I was just like, hold up. What? Okay. So I went, I did it. It was great. It was wonderful. I broke my foot on the second day. Because this is a funny like side story. Prior to my life in the theater and performance world, I had been a cheerleader for our middle school team, gymnast competitively, and like done all this stuff that I was like, yeah, sure, performing, that's a thing I can do, whatever. And on the second day, we were talking about things that you can put on your resume for special skills. And somebody mentioned tumbling. And I was like, tumbling, like what? And they were like, like gymnastic things, whatever. And I was like, huh, okay. Tried to throw a back handspring after not throwing one for probably 2 years and growing about 6 inches since the last time I had thrown one, under rotated and broke a metatarsal in my foot. And immediately, as soon as I landed, I was like, yep, just broke my foot. And they were like, huh? I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to need to go to the hospital. But I didn't really want to tell anyone. So I was like only telling the group of people that I was like with at the time. So I was like, if I tell someone and I've broken myself, they may send me home. Like I might not get to actually finish the program because I don't know how much of it is going to be so physical based. Like I'm just going to have to like tough it out. Like I've had injuries before. It's going to be fine. my foot swelled to like double its size. And like we were doing this exercise where we were like all having to like move at the same speed. And I was just like, I can't keep up. And went to the hospital. Yep, sure. Did all of the things that were like all the x-rays, broken foot. They threw a cast on it. The cast went all the way up to my knee. I was like, I have a cast on for a broken muscle, like a broken bone near my toe, all the way to my knee. It was nuts. But
isn't it just because to strengthen it, because what the weight that you put on your foot via your leg, it's to get it to not damage it further?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Like why it had to be so high, but I was just like,
they figure he's an actor. He needs it to be big.
They were like, right, exactly. They were like
to read from stage.
But the weird part was it didn't close because like I don't think you can close a cast that's like on your foot.
Just
so like
in cartoons.
My toes were
just in cartoons.
I was like my toes were still exposed, and that's what I had broken, was like my pinky toe. So I was just like, okay, all of this stuff is to protect what is exposed. That's the funny part, the irony of it all. But so yeah, I was afraid to tell my parents that I had broken my foot, because I was like, they're gonna freak out and come and take me out. Like everything was about like me coming out of this program, like all I was afraid of. None of that happened. They were like, you have very strong bones. Like the next time they did an x-ray, like 2 weeks later, they were like, this is basically healed. We can take this off. And I was like, great. Cool.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So it was taken off the day before our final performances. I was doing a monologue about being beaten up by the school bully. So I was a little sad that I wasn't going to still have a cast on for like, that the visual gag of that monologue. But no, it was a wonderful experience. Met a lot of really great people and a lot of friends that I'm still like in contact with 20 years later, which is crazy. And then went back, and after I did that program, I had only ever done things that were school related or within the school, and on a whim decided to audition for a community production, and was just like, if I get it, great. If I don't, well, I can still do stuff at school. It's fine. And then I got it, and it was the first time that I was ever reviewed by a newspaper. And I was 15, and I was like, oh gosh, I hope they're nice to me because I'm 15. And I got rave reviews for my portrayal of Artie in Boston Yonkers, and it was just kind of like, so maybe this is something I could do. Like, maybe it's not just a hobby. Like, maybe I can like pursue this to some aspect. But I was still being completely reasonable that I was like, I'm still going to get my degree in math because I'm going to have this career with like, I can do community productions or like regional productions or whatever in my free time.
Right.
Free time for teachers. And it wasn't until I started applying for schools that I was kind of like, all right, I don't know if my major is going to be math or if it's going to be theater, because by the time I got to senior year, I had started doing all of these other outside productions and started doing all of these other like things within the speech team that were propelling me. This was all still in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And when I was applying for schools, I was auditioning for programs that I was like, well, this program or this school has a strong theater program, but then they also offer a lot within the math department, or they do like have lots of cross things that are wonderful about them. So I'll audition for this and I'll apply for this and I'll like do the scholarships for both and see what gets offered. Well, the funniest part about auditioning for schools and scholarships and deciding what my major was eventually going to be and where I was going to school all came down to math, but in a different way, because I was not offered a single scholarship to pursue math, but I was offered full tuition scholarships to pursue acting in multiple schools. And I was like, I don't get it. Like, is there just that many people that are wanting to be mathematicians or teachers, or what is this? Like, why am I getting offered a full tuition scholarship to do acting rather than math? And the stipulations for most of those scholarships were I had to be a theater major. I couldn't be a double major in theater and math, or even a minor in math. I had to do a theater major with an emphasis in either something else related within theater or something else arts related. And I was just like, well, I guess I'm not going to be a math teacher then if I'm going to school for theater, because that's what's paying me the most or even offering me any money. So,
and you're not going to get hired as a math teacher unless you
have a degree in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I was like, well, I guess there goes that thing.
You could be a tutor. You could be a tutor.
I could be a tutor, which I was.
There you go.
So I'm actually wearing my college sweatshirt right now.
What does NKU stand for?
Northern Kentucky University.
So you did not go far from home.
I didn't. I went about 3 hours away. Well, 2.5 hours away. And I went closer to where all of my mom's family lives, because they all live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and Northern Kentucky University is right on the border of the state. So went there, loved every aspect of it. Did a lot of professional theater outside of the school, because even though I did love my experience at the school, I wasn't cast in a lot, but I was one of the people who was working the most, if that makes any sense. And then college is where I started dancing. Like, I had done gymnastics and I had done cheerleading, and there were little aspects of that in the past, but I didn't really start dancing until I was a freshman in college in my first semester taking ballet. So
you were taking ballet as an adult.
I was taking ballet as an 18-year-old freshman. And on my first day, when we're doing just the basic things, like, this is how you find your turnout, this is how you do this, this is the term for this, this is this. The teacher turns to me and goes, I think you're going to be bored in this class. And I was like, how am I going to be bored? This is the first class that I've ever taken. And she was like, really? And I was like, yes. And she goes, well, you have stronger turnout than a lot of people that I've taught at this school prior. You're following the bar while I'm doing it. Like, you're like, you know what's coming. Like, you know, like, I was like, I just have a memory that is kind of photographic, so I just copy whatever I see. And she was like, you may get bored in this class. And I was like, well, I want to go through the fundamentals. Like, I want to learn it. If I'm going to learn it, I would like to learn it rather than move on to one of the upper levels and struggle because I don't know it. And then the teacher hates me because I don't know it. And she was like, I get that. So I'll try to make it as challenging for you as I can. And I was like, okay, great, whatever. So we did the class, and the following semester I continued and did ballet too, and started jazz, and started really kind of conditioning myself for what I was going to like start to pursue. And I knew very early on, even though like ballet was coming naturally to me, that it wasn't going to be the path that I was going to go on, because a lot of professional ballet dancers are people who have been doing it since they were
2 and
babies.
3. Yeah.
And have been molded into the dancer that they're going to become from decades prior. So I was like, there is no chance for me to catch up to that. But I do have performance quality, and I do have flexibility, and I do have this, and I do have musicality. So I can find a way to fit in some other form. So I spent most of the next like year kind of figuring out what that was for me, and like what I wanted it to be and what I thought my body could do. Mm-hmm. And by that following summer, when I was 20, I booked my first professional dance captain job on a show, and just so happened to be singing and dancing in 3 brand new musicals written by Dolly Parton at her amusement park, Dollywood. And on opening day, I got to sing and dance a trio with Dolly Parton. Wow. At 20. And I
see what you didn't know.
I've peaked.
With that doctor, when he set your foot, he was actually a wizard.
Right, exactly.
And that's why it had to go up the entire leg. That's why it had to.
Yep. I was like, I didn't have a dance career until I broke my foot, which is usually something that ends dance careers.
Exactly, yeah. So you have, I mean, so at 20, you've already had all of this happen. And I mean, knowing you as moderately as I do, I mean, we've shared some backstages, but for the most part, I think we've been somewhat passing ships during our careers. How did you maintain a level of maybe not humility, but at the very least excitement, and not get either jaded or become, a total dick about it?
I think that is largely credited to my upbringing. With even when I get things now, or even when I like do incredible things that are like noteworthy, even to this day, I have very grounded parents and family that bring me right back down. Like I am not allowed to have a big head about things, because I'm still their son, their brother, their cousin, their whoever. And so I think that part of growing up was, you can have your accolades, you can have your things, you can be proud of them, but it's never a moment that you just are like, it's never the conversation starter. It's not what you boast about. And like, it's not who you present yourself as. It's first you are you, then your awards and accolades come after that. So it's never the front running story, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So
it's that foundation again, that sort of.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that foundation. And it's so funny. Like even this past year, when I had like fun news to share with my family, I told my mom one day, I was texting her and I was like, hey, we got nominated for this award, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, oh, that's great. Dad and I are buying a new mattress. And I was like, same level.
And it's not to tear you down. It's to just sort of, it's just
to say like, I get it. It's great. But we've got good things too.
Yeah. Well, let's move towards that. It was Broadway World, yes? You're listening to WEBurlesque the Podcast, Season 5. If you would like to join the WEBurlesque Podcast Network, please email WEBurlesque@gmail.com, subject line podcast, and let me know what you have in mind. Our guest today is the extraordinary performer Twinky Boots from the New York City area. You can go to the show notes of this episode to see all of the links for them. TWINKYBOOTS on Twitter and Instagram, and facebook.com/TwinkyBoots. Plus, Members Only Boylesque on Instagram. MEMBERSONLYBOYLESQUE on Instagram. As ever, WeBurlesque thanks you for your support, whether you listen, subscribe, follow, review, or donate at patreon.com/WeBurlesque. We appreciate all that you do to keep our voices heard. Be safe. Well, let's move towards that. It was Broadway World, yes? That you
It was.
and Milo Pony were. What's the formal winning title?
So we won the. It's an interesting title because it was kind of the for the past decade, but then also for this year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
the
kind of a
Award
dual
plus.
All Yeah.
It was
it was an
all-stars and
right. It was so the formal title is Best Burlesque Cabaret by Broadway World. And we won for our show, Members Only Boylesque, only members that we do at the Laurie Beechman Theater.
Mm-hmm. Home of a number of legendary cabaret shows.
Yeah,
basically,
exactly.
if you win or get close to winning Drag Race and you can hold a mic, you want to get a show there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've seen many of the former contestants of Drag Race do their shows there.
You have
been involved in a few.
You have a former contestant who hosts sometimes is a part of your show.
Yes, we do. Jackie Cox has. And the funniest part is that the month when she was filming Drag Race, I had made up this whole story that was actually, I ended up inadvertently giving her a cover story that she didn't create. And I was spreading it around New York like wildfire. Because everybody was like, what's Jackie up to? Where's Jackie? Like, you talk to her all the time. She does your show, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, she's in Europe on vacation with her husband. Not
You're
true.
Just spreading rumors.
Never. And people were like, oh, that's great. That's wonderful. And during that time, her partner was like basically just working and like not really being social. So nobody was really seeing them around town. So it was kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. I believe that. And when she got back, I was like, you fully told me that you were going to Europe. And she was like, nope, those words never came out of my mouth. And I was like, well, then where did I get that? And she was like, maybe when you were talking about that you were going to Europe. And I said, oh, I want to go there. And I went,
you were projecting. You were definitely
wow. So I just created your cover story for your time away. And she was like, yep, I don't have to say I was on a yoga retreat. I was on vacation in Europe. And I was like, you suck.
And do you only, it's only really verified once it hits Reddit. So, I mean,
right. That's the only reason I knew that that's what she was doing. Like, she was fully locked-lipped when she was leaving. Like, all she said to us was she wouldn't be available for that next month's show. That's it. Didn't give us a reason, like didn't need to. We were just like, okay, that's fine. We'll have the other host that we have, Coco Taylor, do it and it'll be great. And she was like, cool, great. I'll be back for the one following that. Well, leading up to, I think it was like, she got back from filming maybe like 3 days before that show and hadn't had access to her phone. So Milo says to me, have you heard from Jackie? Like, I can't get a hold of her. And I'm all like, by this point, I had found out that she was filming. And I was like,
on a yoga retreat.
I go, do yourself a favor and just Google her. right now? And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, Google, just do it. And so he does. And he was like, are you shitting me? She's filming Drag Race right now. And I was like, yeah. And the fact that she's not back must mean, or she hasn't responded must mean something, because they almost at the end of filming. And he was like, oh, that's great. That's great. Oh, okay. Well, do we think she's still doing our show? And I was like, if she said she would be back to do our show, she will be back to do our show. Like, she is that reliable, and she sticks to what she says she's going to do. So if she says she's going to do it, she's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, okay, well then great. And so then as soon as she got back, she was like, I'll just bring the first text she sent to us was, I'll just bring my music for Saturday or for Friday on a flash drive. I don't need to send it to you, right? We were like, nope, that's fine. That was it. That was, I'm back from Europe.
I feel so relaxed. Well, where did the impetus for Members Only and your work with Milo Pony come from?
Broadway Bares. It really did. So Milo and I met doing Broadway Bares. We have never done a number together, but we have we had crossed paths many times, worked with many of the same choreographers, many of the same costumers, just never at the same time. And probably, I think it was this past year, or this past February, marked my 5 years doing burlesque solo. And Milo had started just prior to me and was working with a company at the time called Bad Apple Boylesque that now Jason Waterfalls had started with Don Chipotle, and they were starting their show, had started their company, and were like just kind of getting their footing, had done a show at Stonewall, but then had found a new home at the Triad Uptown. And I had seen Aaron at a friend of ours, Castor Bollocks, actually, was the mutual friend, was having a cookie exchange Christmas party. And we both happened to be there. And he was talking to me. He was like, I've seen you at Broadway Bares things, but we've never actually met. I'm Aaron, Milo, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, it's so nice to meet you. At the time, I wasn't Twinky Boots. I was just Chad. And he was like, yeah, I've just started doing solo stuff. And I was like, solo? Oh my God, that sounds great. I've never even, at that point, had never even thought of like doing burlesque for anything other than Broadway Bares. Like, I had never even put it together that might be a thing I would do. And so he was like, yeah, I just started with this group. We have a show coming up next month, blah, blah, blah. He's like, you should come. And I was like, absolutely, sure. And you know how like when you're at a party and you're like hanging with somebody and like you're whatever, and you're like, you should come to this gig or this event that I'm doing or blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, sure, I'll
absolutely
be there.
Will, yeah.
And 99% of the time, they're not coming.
Well, it's like, the big Agatha wink is what it is.
It's exactly that. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds like fun. And then I was like, no, I'm going to that. Like, and I, before I could talk myself out of it, bought my ticket and bought an additional ticket and was like, I'll find somebody to go with me. And so I took my friend James and we went. And after the first person performed, he turned to me and he goes, why aren't you doing this? And I was like, huh. And I just kind of thought to myself, why aren't I doing this?
It seems to be a thread in your life where a lot of people are turning to you and saying,
right,
why are you doing this?
Right. And
everyone has this idea right before you.
Everyone already has like a plan written out for what I'm supposed to do, but I just don't already see it. And
see, those are the NPCs in your video game that are guiding you along the way. Exactly.
Yes. Oh my God. And I've been playing a lot of video games lately, but that's a whole different tangent we'll get on later. that night, as soon as I got home from the show, I sent a message to the owners of Bad Apple and was like, was at your show tonight, absolutely loved it, let me know, because at the time, like when they first started, they did auditions for them, and I was like, let me know if and when you're ever doing auditions again. This is something I would love to be involved with. I've done Broadway Bares, and I'm just interested in doing it more often and like finding my way within this world and blah, blah, blah. And they wrote me back and were like, meet us at therapy tomorrow around 7:30. I was like, absolutely, I'll be there. Sure. I go in, hired on the spot. Like literally, I was like, I said hello, and they were like, so we've looked you up, and if you want to be in next month's show, you're in. And I was like, I don't even have a name. I don't have a costume. I don't have a number. But I was just like, well, maybe this will light a fire under my ass. So I just said yes. And I called my friend who had introduced me to Jerry and the costumer friend and was just like, so I just said yes to doing my first solo burlesque number. And he was like, great, I'll costume it. And I was like, great. Now I just need to figure it out. So I put my phone on shuffle, and the first song that came on was Selena Gomez. And I was like, I can kind of picture this, because it was also right around Valentine's Day. And I was like, because it was Selena Gomez, Same Old Love.
Okay.
And I was like, I have a whole story in my head already. And I'm waiting for a date, and I start getting Grindr notifications. That's it. That's all I'm like. And so I went home on GarageBand, like found the Grindr tone and started putting it in the song at random places, and was like, I can act this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And then I started like choreographing a middle like section of it, because I was like, I know at the beginning I'm going to be wearing this, and it's going to be difficult for me to like really dance in it, so I can like start to really dance later in this, and blah blah blah. And so I like choreographed like a 40-second snippet that night and recorded it and sent it to Bad Apple. And I was like, this is kind of like the direction I'm going. I'm thinking like, blah, blah, blah. They were like, fuck you, because this is already like, normally when we bring in someone new, we like rent out a rehearsal space because we need to see what the number's going to look like beforehand and all blah, blah. And they're like, we're never going to have to do that with you. So fuck you. And I was like, is this good?
Is that all right?
Is that okay? And they were like, yeah, it's great. We'll see you next month. And I was like, okay, thanks. And so put it together, did it the next month. And right before I was doing it, I still didn't have a name. And some of the other guys that were in the group, we were in an email thread, and they were like, so have you decided on what your name's going to be yet? Like, and I just was like, I have no idea what to do. Like, they were like, well, so this thread was Milo, Sloppy Chulo, Jackie Nova, and myself. And Jackie was like, well, I find that the best names, or the names that stick, are ones that like kind of resonate with like the person themselves, or like kind of relate to something that they are really into. So like, what are some things that you're like really into, or like some characteristics that are really known about you, or whatever? And I was like, well, I drink a lot of coffee, and people could never guess my age. And he was like, okay. And I was like, so at one point I was really leaning into my name was going to be Cafe Olay, because they were like, well, how do you take your coffee? And I was like, light and sweet, like me. and
that's a
and
tagline right there.
And I was like, oh, I was like, well, that, you know, that's the thing. And they were like, oh, it's cute. It's cute. But it was Sloppy Chulo who came back. He was like, I really want to lean into this. Like, people could not guess your age. Like, you're the thing. He was like, so like, you're kind of like a twink. Like, you're a little, you're just like always you're perpetually a twink. And I was like, yep, been in my whole life, basically. And he was like, okay. And like, and you did Broadway Bares, and like you do like the Broadway thing. It's like, what about Twinky Boots? And I was like, you know, like there's those movie moments where like, especially like in Boogie Nights, when Dirk Diggler hears his name for the first time and you see the marquee with his name on it, that literally happened in my head. Like, I was like, huh. And in my head, I saw like a marquee with that spelled out on it. And I was like, hold on. And first thing I did was look up to see if it was already a performer name on Instagram, on Twitter, on Google, anything. Typed it
due
in,
diligence that most do not.
and nothing came up. And I was like, how the hell is this not a thing already? Like, how does this not exist? Kinky Boots has been on Broadway, already won the Tony, and has been a movie that's been out for years. Like, how is this not, like, it's not even a drag name. Like, how is this not around? And so first thing I did, snatched it up on all platforms, because I was like, this is my name. If it is not someone else's, this is my name. And I am taking it everywhere that I can. And so I did, and introduced myself on Instagram February of 5 years ago. What is that? I was the math major, 2016. And I been the Twinky Boots ever since. But no, it was a thing. That was the last the last aspect of my like starting, was figuring out my name. Like, I had my number, I had my costume, I had everything else ready before my name. And then once the name was in place, I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this. And I posted on Instagram the like, here comes Twinky Boots, like introducing like post. And the Femme Fatales reached out to me because they were doing this new, basically like a blog about everyone's first time like doing burlesque. I just called it like my first time. And they were like, this is before your first one, so we want to do an interview with you to like just kind of like see where you're at with the preparation and like all this stuff, and then we'll do like a follow-up a couple days after about how the show went. And I was like, sure, absolutely, it'll be fun. And met Luscious Lane and Ruby Machant, and they were so wonderful and lovely. And we're like, we got to see your first show. We loved it. We want you to be in our next one. And so I started working with them a lot, started doing like the Bad Apple shows. And then I left New York.
Where did you go?
Well, like every film actor, I was going to be moving to LA because my agency at the time was wanting me to go out for pilot season. And I said, well, now's the time I can do it, because I'm not booking, or I've not booked anything here, and I'm not tied to a job here that I need to be like around for. So I'm just gonna do it, because once again, somebody was telling me I needed to do it. So I said, okay. But before I was going to move out to LA, I had been scouted on Instagram by a resort in Michigan that's a gay resort that wanted me to come and bartend for the summer. And they were like, we'll bring you out, you'll work a lot, make some money, and then go wherever you're gonna go after that. And I said, sure, why not? So I went and bartended at a bar in Western Michigan, And
is it safe to say you were hired for your body if you were hired off Instagram? Because I don't know if you were doing a lot of videos of you mixing drinks.
No, I wasn't, but I had already been named the New York LGBT ambassador for Stoli Vodka at that point, because I had won the Mr. Stoli Guy competition by that point. So there were little hints that I did bartend, but not really involved with my Instagram. My Instagram was also not as peach-centric at the time.
Okay.
As it is now.
Well, you know, one must not only embrace their branding, but be behind it.
Right.
So.
Right. Literally. So after Michigan, I decided to take a little time back in Kentucky before I was going to be moving out west. And in the meantime of taking this break from New York to move to LA, my agency dropped me. And I said, well, I don't want to move to LA at this point without an agent because I don't want to start from scratch in a place that I don't know anyone.
Sure.
I'd rather move back to New York where I at least have connections in different worlds and can get back to work, essentially. And so I came back to New York and then jumped headfirst back into burlesque because at that point I had only done a couple of performances. And the rest is history.
Were you already Twinky Boots by the time I would have seen you at Rock Bar?
Yes.
Okay.
I had done, that was actually the summer I was already working in Michigan. My stipulation for coming to work for them was that they were going to give me the 3 weeks off that I needed for rehearsals and performance of Broadway Bares. Gotcha. And they said, that is our slow part of the season. So absolutely you can take those 3 weeks off. And I said, done, I will do it. So I was actually back to do Broadway Bares, but I had been to Twinky Boots at that point, and had done probably like 3 shows by that point with Bad Apple and maybe 1 with La Femme.
So when Bad Apple dissolved and Members Only came into frame, how did you know that you wanted not only a potentially starring role, but also a managerial production role?
So part of the reason that Members Only came around was when Bad Apple dissolved, Milo and I we had at one point thought about buying Bad Apple and taking it over because it was a name and a brand that was already established. But after a while, we were like, I think we want to just make ours. Like we want to do our version of what we want our show to be. And we don't want to have anybody's preconceived notions of what a prior company is to be on it. Sure. So we've always bounced ideas for numbers and things like that off of each other, and like ideas for shows that we would ever want to do off of each other even before we had a company together. And so it just seemed like the gradual stepping stone was going to be us forming a company or forming some kind of show together. And when Bad Apple dissolved and we weren't really there weren't really performance opportunities for us as much anymore because all of our performance opportunities had been through them. We were like, well, let's just create our own show and create our own performance opportunities at this point, because we're still creating names for ourselves in the New York's like burlesque scene. This is just another way for people to start knowing our names.
And then they got to come to you.
We have a show and it starts to, exactly. So we decided, and I had an in with Spin Cycle, who are the producing partners that bring in all of the Drag Race girls to do all of the different cabarets at
Laurie Beechman.
Yeah. And had in passing just mentioned my dip into burlesque. And they were like, we've always wanted to have a burlesque show in our production like gamut. So they were like, if you've got a show, we'll put it on. And I said, what are the costs? And they were like, we take on all production costs for the show, especially because we pay out the venue, we do this is what you get of the cut of the ticket sales, and this is what you get off of the door, and blah blah blah, and this is what like, and I was just like, that is totally reasonable to me as a producer that's not done like producing a show on my own. Like before, I was like, this is a deal that I completely stand behind, and I will do it. Yes, absolutely. We have a show, and we will do it on March of 2019. That's when we will do the show. And they were like, great, we'll put it in the books. And I said, cool. And called Milo and I said, we have a show March 2019. He goes, we don't even have a company name yet. And I go, it's fine, we've got time. And so we had already known, we were pulling in a bunch of our friends that had done Bad Apple with us, and even brought in Jason Waterfalls, who was one of the creators of Bad Apple, to do our first show, because we were like, we want to showcase our friends who do this as well, and we want to bring in an opportunity for all of these people to be seen. And when we did the original like promo photos and photo shoot for it, we brought in all of these people and we were like bouncing names off of them. We were like, these are some of the names that we're thinking of. Like, we want it to kind of be like a double entendre of like male genitals. So we're thinking, since we're a Boylesque group, we thought, and I was like, I'm trying to think of some of the others that we had ever thrown out. But as soon as we said members only, it was another like one of those like click moments. Like, we were like, members only Boylesque. The hashtag is Mo Boylesque, because we're a homosexual duo that are running a Boylesque company. So they're already there, they're built in. And I was like, well, what happens if you type in members only? Like, what pops up other than like the members only jacket? And so there was apparently at one point a rap group that had the same name.
I buy that.
And Milo was like, I am totally fine with the people that are trying to look up that rap group finding us instead, so let's do it. And so we snatched up all of the property, like all of the different like handles and social media things for that name, and the rest fell into place that way as well. So it was kind of like, it's just always been a natural fit with Milo and I working together. Like, and we always like in conversation will have the same like thing pop up where it's like something that are his strengths balance out things that I'm weaker in, as far as like the production aspect or like the marketing aspect or just the different company aspects are things that we balance each other out in such a way that it works very well for us. And I think that's also due to us being similar styles of performers as far as burlesque, but also very different. Like, we come from a Broadway background and we've done Broadway Bares, and we know like that performance quality aspect. But in my eyes, Milo is more of a classic burlesque style performer, and I'm more of like a neo burlesque style performer in the choreography aspect and like the types of music and genre that I do versus what Milo does. And so we bring those two styles and balance each other out that way as well. So there's a lot of yin and yang with the two of us, and I love that.
What is the spoken or unspoken mission statement of a members only production of a show? What do you look for?
So each of our shows it depends on the venue that we're performing in.
Mm-hmm.
So our Beechman show, and under our quote unquote contract with Spin Cycle, is it's a male presenting burlesque show. Mm-hmm. So not necessarily that everyone in the show is male, but that they are doing a number that is either showcasing a masculine quality, or they're doing a female to male drag burlesque number, mm-hmm. or it's a male drag performer doing a hosting job mm-hmm. as a female. So there's still like that tongue-in-cheek hint of the male aspect of the burlesque persona being there. With our online show, however, we're kind of like, screw it. We want to do our show and book in a variety of performers and do like a traditional variety show with male and female performers that do burlesque and pole and aerial. And we can do that because we're in a venue that is our home. So mm-hmm. as long as our performers can record a number in a space where they have access to those apparatuses if they want to use them, then we can absolutely use them. Plus, we're able to outsource and use friends of ours that we've met from all over the world. And that's one singular good thing about this pandemic this past year, is that we've been able to continue to do shows from home that have incorporated friends of ours from around the world that have not been able to do our show live in person yet, because they can't always get to New York to do a show on a Friday night. So,
and that's all under the hard drive branding?
So yeah, so the hard drive branding is our online show. Another little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hard drive, because it's computer related and streaming. We've had a couple of other like pop-up shows that we've done in the past. Like we did our private show, but we were afraid that Spin Cycle would get upset with us for having a show away from their venue that was under this name, like right when we first started. But then we were like, we own our company. Like we can do shows other places. Right. So we called it private, like it was a secret, but also private as in your junk. And so we did that, and we've had a lot of other little like shows and nods to things, but the members only Boylesque umbrella company is just, as a whole, our mission statement is a queer operated burlesque company that is showcasing and giving an outlet for performers of all genres and different statements. So we've had trans performers, we've really done a push to make sure that even though we were always bringing in BIPOC performers, that we were making it a big push for our shows moving forward, that we were always trying to have at least half of our cast be performers that were of a BIPOC mm-hmm. world. Like which is also wonderful, because we're finding all of these other performers via Instagram or via like word of mouth, that friends of ours are like, we would love to do your show, and we know that you're really trying to increase your cast of BIPOC performers. So if you haven't met your quota for them, you need to reach out to this person and you need to find them and bring them on. And I've been so wonderfully surprised and delighted with every performer that we've found, that I'm just like, I can't wait till we can have you in person, or till we're touring and we can come to your place and do a show with you, because I love all of you.
Ponypod, a traveling performers podcast. If you like hearing from traveling performers, please subscribe and leave 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Miss Mary Jane Green, the Treasure Tent Teaser. You can find me on the main social media platforms or by joining my mailing list at missmaryjanegreen.com. In the immortal words of Jack Kerouac, nothing behind me, everything ahead of me, as is ever so on the road.
Do you like movies?
Any movies. Old movies, new movies.
Bad movies.
Sad movies.
I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And I'm Rachel Corky Shank.
And together we host Screen Snark, a movie podcast for movie lovers by movie lovers.
It's a podcast dedicated to the movies that are in our eyes, on our minds, and in our hearts.
Featuring guests of a wide selection of entertainment backgrounds, performers, writers, creatives.
So please join us for the casual cinema conversation every other Monday wherever you get your podcast.
And follow us on Twitter at screen_snark, and we'll see you at the movies. All right, we're supposed to do that bit together.
When you're not producing, when you're not performing, when you're not putting all of that on, what are some of the things that are important to you or that you still try to make time for?
I've become, even more so than I ever was growing up, a huge gamer over the past year, specifically on the Switch, because that's what I already had. That was the system I already had prior to pandemic lockdown, and it's I laugh because I've kind of become like amateur semi-pro level on some of the games, to the point where I've even competed in tournaments over this last year. Not to say that I've won, or not that I've actually like placed in any of them, but I've competed. I went and I tried. But there were games that I like kind of brushed off and was just like, I would never get involved with this game. Like, this game is so bogus and blah, blah, blah. And now I play it like every day. But one of those is Fortnite, because I always just joked about it being like, it's a game that 12-year-olds play. And now I shoot those 12-year-olds. Now
you kick those 12-year-olds in the ass.
Yes. And now I toy with their emotions. Never mind. No, I did a tournament for Fortnite with my brother, who's in his 40s, and the two of us, we competed and ended up placing in the top 10% of the tournament. And we were just like, okay, this is a pretty good first showing for the two of us, because neither of us have ever done this. And we're like, we just know, like, we're brothers. We know each other's playing style, so we know how to work with each other. Even though we don't live together and we don't like see each other all the time, we've grown up with each other. We know how the other operates in the gaming system, so it works well for us. But yeah, so I did the Animal Crossing thing. Spent a lot of time building an island and developing and creating a whole backstory for my villagers and all kinds of stuff. Like, and then at one point during quarantine and lockdown, I had a family emergency that I went home for back to Kentucky, and I took it with me, and my mom became obsessed with it and was like, she would watch me for hours a day playing on Animal Crossing and like getting so invested in my animal villagers that I was like, Mom, why don't you get one of your own? And I kept trying to like subtly drop the hint to my dad that my mom needed one, but he just didn't get the hint. So maybe eventually she'll be playing with me on like a future system or whatever. But no, that's another big thing that's really important to me though, is family. Like, I talk to my parents, if not every day, every other day. And they're both retired. Like, there's not a whole lot that can happen in their lives from a day-to-day basis to talk about, but we still will talk for at least an hour a day.
How many mattresses can they be buying? I mean,
right. How many mattresses can they be? Exactly. How many new things are you doing for the house? Or even just recently, they've been working on a puzzle that has just been the bane of their existence because the coloring of the puzzle is so hard to see in the lighting of the living room. And I'm like, move the puzzle to a different room then or something, because they've been working on it for at least a week. And they'll like, well, my mom goes, well, I put another piece in the puzzle. And then I took out a different piece because it clearly didn't go there. Like, well, you're working on it at least, moving along. So yeah, my relationship with my parents has always been a very strong, important part in my life. Before coming out, after coming out, like it was always just there. Like I've always been very close to my mom, but it probably wasn't until after I came out that I really developed a closer relationship with my dad.
When was that?
Which is funny because like I came out to my parents when I was 22.
I think everyone at home is a little surprised, perhaps simply because of the last hour that we've covered, that 22 seems a little late to the game.
22 seems a little late for a former gymnast cheerleader from middle school who was a theater kid and went to school for theater and started dancing. Yeah. And worked with Dolly Parton.
Yep, yeah, you hit a lot of check boxes.
But it was like I was out to my friends and like everyone at college knew.
Okay.
But like it wasn't like it
wasn't that you didn't know, it was that you just hadn't.
Right. It wasn't that it wasn't that I didn't know, it was that I just didn't have the conversation with my parents and my brother at that point. Mainly because like coming out is scary. It always is. Even if you think that you're ready for it, there's always that deep fear in the back of your head that you will be rejected by someone who you love. And I knew that they were still going to be supportive. I just didn't want to be looked at in a different way to them that was in a negative way. So that's the fear that was always there. And the catalyst for me deciding to just do it and just rip off the Band-Aid and tell them was I had gone home for a visitation for a good friend of mine that I had done theater with in school, had been at a party, was celebrating that she had gotten an internship at a new job that she really wanted and was really excited about, was celebrating. And on her way home was getting into a cab and got caught in the crossfire of a gunshot and died. And all I could think the whole time while I was at the visitation was there something that she always wanted to say to someone that she was afraid that she was going to be rejected over, that she just didn't get to ever say? And I didn't want to have that laying over my head anymore, because these are the people that I cared most about in my life. And I just knew that, well, it might be hard to accept at first, but eventually they would get, and they would understand. And so we got home from the visitation. We're sitting in the living room. My dad had turned on the TV, and I was like, Dad, can you turn that off for a second? And he was like, of course, yeah, sure. And I was like, I don't know why I have waited as long as I've waited to tell you this, but I'm gay. And my mom and my dad just kind of looked at each other, and my mom looked back at me and she goes, we know, we just didn't want to push it. We wanted you to be ready to tell us. That's all. And I was like, okay. I guess you can turn the TV back on. Like, I fully expected this whole breakout, like, dramatic moment. And it wasn't. Like, it was just, you're still who you are. Like, so, whatever. And I was kind of just like, I was shocked, but I wasn't at the same time. Like, that's just kind of how my family always has been. It's just like, my parents have always been very accepting of anyone that they ever meet. Until you do them wrong, they will always give you the benefit of the doubt of who you are as a person. And that's something I've always kind of brought along with me growing up as well, is that I don't genuinely dislike someone until they prove that they are the wrong person to be with or to be around. And like, I just try to be an open and genuine person myself. So it's like, I want to surround myself with people that are like that. And I get that from my parents.
And it's just the two of you, right? You
What
just
was
have
the
you
actual
and your
original question? Yes.
you have a brother, but you don't have any other siblings, or?
Nope, just me.
And you're
brother.
the youngest.
Yes.
So.
My brother's always kind of been more of like even though he is my brother, he's always been more of like a fatherly type figure to me, because he's almost 9 years older than me. So when my dad was still in the Air Force and was working these crazy long hours all the time, my brother was like the male figure that was always around for me and was always very protective of me. And even all the way up until he graduated high school, was like super protective of me. And then when I started gymnastics and started cheerleading, and he had already like gone off to college, and my dad then stepped in as this protective figure for me, no one ever batted an eye when I said, I want to do gymnastics, or I want to try out for the cheerleading team. The first thing, they both sat me down and they were like, now, you know, this isn't something that is considered the normal for there to be a male cheerleader on the middle school team, even the high school team in this area. So you're gonna get a lot of teasing. You're gonna get a lot of people who are questioning it, or they're not gonna understand it. So before you sign up for this and before you like go down this road, you need to know and be ready for that. And I said, I want to do it because all of my friends are on the team. I want to do this with my friends, and I want to so I'm doing it because I want to hang out with my friends. And they were like, okay, well, then we will drive you to the tryout.
And were you the only guy?
I was the only one on the team. I had convinced another friend of mine to audition, but he didn't make it. And then the 2 years that I was on the team, I was the only boy. And then when I went to cheerleading camp, only boy. They tried to put me on my own floor in the dorm. And I was like, I'm at cheer camp by myself with the only people I know here are my teammates. And you're trying to sequester me away from them? Like, there's got to be a space available on the floor. Just put me in a separate dorm. Like, I don't have to be on a separate floor. And so my coach talked to them and we're like, he's not going to harm anyone by being in the same floor. This is already a co-ed dorm for the school. So it's not going against the college's stance on boys and girls in the same dormitory. Like, it's a co-ed dorm. Like, he can be on the floor. We're in suites. It's fine. And they moved me down like an hour later after I was like, oh, well, have fun, guys. That's going to be a great week. I'll see you at the classes, I guess, or at lunch. And then they moved me down.
So,
and by the end of the week, they had fully like gone lax, and I was allowed to be in rooms and like allowed to like be around my
they just got
teammates.
tired. They were worn
like,
down.
They were like, "Oh, we don't have to be worried about this kid."
So, as this level-headed overachiever that you appear to be, you have been quite successful in a number of different corridors of entertainment and showmanship. Is there anything that you're not good at, Twinky Boots? Is there anything that can you play an instrument? How do we know that you haven't actually been granted these magic wishes from your foot doctor from old?
Well, I don't play it anymore, but I played the clarinet and bass clarinet in band in school. Picking it up now, it would just sound like some duck quacking that is fully out of tune, because there is no way I remember how to play that. I wouldn't even know where to place my fingers. I would know how to place my finger. I wouldn't know what notes were. I would know, like, the muscle memory would be there for like putting them back on the instrument, but I wouldn't know like what the notes were anymore. I don't read music very well anymore, even though I was in band for a few years. And then went to school and studied aspects of musical theater. It takes me a long time to sight read music. So I have to like count on the measure and on the staff, like where the note is placed in what, like, so it takes me a little bit longer to sight read and try to do stuff. Sight singing, screw that, not gonna happen, because I was never taught that skill. Like I just don't know. Like I can match pitch and I can match a tone when told what it is and demonstrated what it is, and that's kind of like the mimicry photographic kind of memory that I have. I was just never told, oh, you're singing this is this note. So like if I were to be like, oh, I need to sing a B right now,
you need someone to
what
do
a
the
B
pitch
is.
pipe
I
first.
would need someone to like either hit the pitch pipe first, or someone to say, oh, this is a B, you've been singing a B. Like, I don't know. So that aspect of my skill set, not so much there.
Is there anything
I
that
also
you
don't tap dance?
Oh, okay. Well, so
despite the fact that I have a burlesque number where I tap dance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, burlesque is all about faking it convincingly, so I think that's fair. You have ballet that you started as an adult. You have the acrobatic aspect of gymnastics. I'm assuming you learned modern dance and other things in your tenure. I've had a very weird dance background over the years, because I worked on cruise ships for about 5 years total, on and off. And in those ship shows, we had to do so many different styles that I learned all of these other random styles that I never thought I would do. Like I have some ballroom background and I have some like contemporary and hip hop and like all of these other things that I'm just like, this British born Kentucky boy who started ballet at 18 is now dancing hip hop around the world and being paid for it. Okay. But can you do a back handspring?
Not anymore. Have not tried since the day I broke my foot when I was 15.
I mean, that's a good omen to not give it
21 years that I have not tried, and not even on a trampoline, not even on like I was actually a few years ago, like right when I first moved to New York for the first time, I was in callbacks for the original workshop production of Bring It On the musical. And I was like, this is right up my alley.
I think many people would imagine.
Theater. Yeah. I was like, cheerleading and musical theater, been there, done that. Let's do this. And we were in one of the callbacks and they had us all lined up and they were like, all right, special skills. We need to know like what kind of stunts and things that you do that we may be able to incorporate in choreography or whatever while we're still developing this show. And they get to me and they were like, tumbling. And I was like, not anymore. And I was like, single bass and double bass partner stunts, done, easy. Like, can still do those, not a problem. Can sing while doing it and lifting someone, easy, done it. And they were like, okay, but you don't tumble? And I was like, nope, not anymore. Not since I broke my foot when I was 15. And they were like, okay, thank you. And I didn't know at that time that thank you meant, thank you, please leave.
Yeah.
So I just stood there and I was like, okay, no problem. And then they moved on to the next person and someone came over and was like, that means you can go. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And so I went and grabbed my bag and I left and I was like, well, it's better than lying and saying, yeah, I still can do this, and then trying it and breaking my other foot or breaking my foot again or doing
hurting
whatever.
somebody else.
Like,
because if you're
or hurting someone else. And so I was just like, nope, not gonna do it. And so I don't. But I am also a full foot taller than I was when I was a gymnast.
How tall are you?
At this point, I'm 6'1".
Okay.
And so like when I was competitively doing it growing up, I was under 5 feet tall.
But you were always sort of the same body type, right? You've always sort of had like this length about
I didn't
you.
always have like the long limbs.
Okay.
Like I was proportionate, but I wasn't like, my legs definitely were not as long in comparison to my body as they are now.
Okay.
So the mechanics of the tumbling were very different than they were for me when I started to grow, because my limbs were different lengths than they were when I was competing. So it made perfect sense for why I broke my foot. But
you just hadn't
do it.
Yeah, you hadn't your body hadn't adjusted to the fact that the dimensions were so different.
Right. I was like, I didn't take into consideration the angles that I needed to be in. Didn't use the math part of my brain.
See, and you chose one instead of the other. All that wasted time, you not learning equations, clearly to your detriment in all of your non-successions. Well, Twinky Boots, it has been a delight getting to know you during this conversation, and I thank you for being a part of the first couple episodes of season 5. Since we don't know what is to come in 2021, except perhaps a little bit more of 2020, is there anything that you have taken from the last 12 months or so that provide either another foundation, since that seems to be the theme, another foundation to how you will approach these years after? Have you learned what have you learned about yourself that either surprised you or that you knew because of your earlier foundations you could rely on?
I mean, the past 12 months has taught all of us that we have to be immensely resourceful as far as what is going to continue to create content or create any kind of artistic outreach. But things that I didn't realize about myself was I didn't anticipate that I would develop any kind of video editing skill or any kind of sound editing skill or all of these other skills that were going to be needed for producing an online show. Because since we're doing this show and we're running on a limited budget, we can't outsource to have someone build our show for us and edit our show for us. So that falls entirely on myself and Milo. And I had all of the downtime because when we first started this pandemic, Milo was still working and was still having to like go to his job on a daily basis. And I was just at home with nothing to do but twiddle my thumbs and play Animal Crossing. So I said, well, let me play around with some things. And if they don't work, then we'll reach out to somebody that we know who does it. And for what our show is, it works. I'm not saying I'm Academy Award level video editing nature, but it gets the show working and it keeps the audience entertained. So I'm happy with the outcome.
And really, that's all we can do
to develop.
Yeah, that's all we can do. I mean, you can't have a year that is rife with the term unprecedented times and not acknowledge the fact that these are unprecedented times.
Right, exactly.
None of us expected that we had to be as resourceful as you said. Yeah. And obviously some folks have chosen to basically take the last year off, begrudgingly, or happily, depending on the person. There are some folk who are like, you know what, it's not my vibe, and they have not set foot on a digital stage in the last 12 plus months. And that's, I think it's just what it does is it doesn't devalue those performers. It shows that there are all different kinds of performers, and those people should be celebrated too. And this is not the time for anyone to be potentially suggesting that one is inferior to the other. It's just different.
Right. No, there's just, even with numbers that are, or performers that do our show, like some of their numbers just don't translate the same way on a digital format versus an in-person format. And we see what works and what doesn't. But a lot of those times, like I recently got to do an in-person job for the first time in almost a full year. I did a socially distanced show where all the performers wore a mask the entire time and the audience wore their mask the whole time and nobody came within 6 feet of us. And it was great because I don't really enjoy when everybody touches you, but I cried. I honestly watched one of the numbers and it was so beautiful and it was so just what I needed in that moment after a year of not being on stage, in like in-person stage, and just watching the effortless way that she was moving it and like doing this number, I cried. And it was like, it's one of those things, like, yes, the shelf life of a performer is not always guaranteed. You don't know that you're going to be performing all the way up until the last moments that you're alive, but you always have that drive in you, even if you've retired, even if you've stopped doing the specific art form that you do. Like, I don't technically do ballet anymore, but I still go to the ballet and I still enjoy it. And I still have these fond memories of what life was like doing it. But when you see someone doing something that they are meant to be doing, and you see them just living and being the truest version of who they are, it's enough to make you cry. Like, I had missed it so much and was so happy to be in that space, to be able to not only share the stage with this performer, but also witness them performing. And it was just, it's like, it's one of those things, like, you take it for granted. I was doing, up until the pandemic, I was doing probably 5 to 6 shows a week. Like, it was getting to the point where I was almost every single day performing at a different venue and doing burlesque. Like, that was my, like, becoming my full-time job. And when it all got stripped away, pun intended, I didn't know. I started to lose and forget who I was, even though I've only been a burlesque performer solo for 5 years.
You packed a lot into those 5 years.
Yeah, I had committed and done so much work to get to where I was that I was just like, well, who am I now? Like, I have been an actor and I've done that for almost my entire life. And I've been a singer and I've been a dancer and I've done this, like, and I've worked here and I've worked that and I've done this, but it wasn't until I became a burlesque performer that I really felt like I found the most me version of me. Like, I connected with the art form. I connected with the development of how numbers are created and how the costumes are involved and the musicality of, like, teasing and doing all of the different things within the genre of burlesque, that it was another one of those just, like, it clicks moments. And so when it was taken away, I was kind of one of those people at the very beginning. Like, I was like, do I want to do this digitally? I don't love self-recording. Like, when I have to do self-tapes for auditions for things, I hate it, because I enjoy playing off of someone else. And when you're not doing an in-life person number, you don't see how the audience is responding. You don't see how they're getting it. So it's like, you have to just picture it in your head. And I was like, do I want to put in that kind of work? And it wasn't until we did our first digital show of sorts. We called it Round the Globe, and we did it on Instagram Live. But it wasn't until
and Jackie hosted
I saw
that, right?
Mm-hmm, she sure
I watched it. I was there. I saw it.
Jackie hosted, and I pulled in a bunch of performers from around the globe. Like, that's how we got the name. But it wasn't until some of the performers that were in that show reached out to me about how down that they were feeling because they weren't performing anywhere, and how it was affecting their income and how it was affecting their just well-being in general, not being able to express themselves, that I was like, well, screw this. We have to do a show then. Like, I need to stop just sitting on my ass and do this, because I'm feeling the exact same thing. And if there's other people who are feeling this exact same thing, then let's put on a damn show. And so we did. And we did Round the Globe. It had its technical issues because it was all through Instagram Live. And when you're expecting, that was a lot that we put on Jackie. Like, she had to do so much for that show. She did a great job, but we were like, so you're going to run this, and you're going to do it from our thing, and you're going to video, and you're going to bring everybody on, and you're going to do this. Like, that's expecting a lot from a host, to not only, like, introduce everyone and interview everyone
sort of
and
stage
do all
manage.
of this,
yeah,
but, like, also exactly stage manage the entire show.
Yeah.
Without a tech run, because heck, how do you tech run that? Yeah, so we were like, how do we fix this? Because this is too much. And so then we stumbled onto Crowdcast, because I watched there's a group in Seattle that does an Alice in Wonderland burlesque show.
Mod
they
Carousel?
were doing a Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Mod Carousel are all in it, but it's a different producer who does the show. I can't think of their name off the top of my head, but my burlesque daughter has done the show in the past, and they were doing a streaming version of it where the cast would be like watching along with it and like commentating, and we're doing it on Crowdcast. And I was like, what is Crowdcast? And I looked into it more, and I was like, this seems like the platform that would be able to host our show if we did it and we recorded it. I'm gonna throw this by Milo. And he was like, absolutely, let's do it. Recording it sounds so much better than trying to do it live. And so we did.
Yeah.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Well, I'll have in the show notes all of the ways that people can keep up with you and Members Only, and all of the things that come forward this year and thereafter. But thank you so much. You are an exceptional performer. I'm not going to try to one-up you with a mattress. And I'm so glad that you have been able to provide stages to folks who really need it. I think because the mental health and the skill set and everything, it puts a lot on the individual to put it all together and deal with all of those mental health and all of those other people. Sometimes goes under acknowledged. So I thank you for that. And I thank Milo Pony for also doing that as well. So it has been a pleasure. I'm going to let you have the rest of your day to play your, what are we on? Are we still doing Fortnite? Are we on Animal Crossing? What's on the docket today?
I've already checked in on my animals and Animal Crossing. I have been leading my my soccer team, my football club from FIFA all prior to this. So I haven't been on Fortnite yet, but I probably am going to switch and go on to Dead by Daylight. Try to survive a couple horror movies and see what happens.
Fair enough. That sounds like a fine way to spend a Saturday. So, Twinky Boots, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And one day we shall share the wings again, and I look forward to it.
Yes.
Bye, Twinky. Thank you so much. What a
Bye.
pleasure. Thank you.
Mwah.
WEBurlesque the Podcast, property of WEBurlesque Corporation, all rights reserved, Viktor Devonne. Opening and closing music, On a 45 by This Way to the Egress, available on iTunes, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your songs. Used with permission. Please visit WeBurlesquePodcast.com for show notes on this and any other episode of WeBurlesque the Podcast.